Hello, sir. Good evening.
Yeah, yeah.
Ha. Yes, sir. On behalf of the Professional Development Committee of the Western India Regional Council, the Institute of Cost Accountants of India, I welcome our today's speaker, CMA Dr. VVLN Shastri, sir, for today's series on carbon markets. Shastri, sir, has more than 20 years of experience in banking, investment banking, equity research, private equity, merger and acquisition, software, corporate, corporate finance, and corporate and criminal laws. He has published more than 1,000 articles in various publications across the world, a columnist in financial magazines, and expert analyst in various international and national business channels. Thank you, sir. Now I request sir to kindly start the session, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. I think you are able to see my screen, which I have shared with all.
Yes, sir. It's
Yeah.
visible. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Fine. Thank you. See that. In fact, on carbon credits, at the request of Arindam, I have devised it into three parts. Part one is that's what is seen on the screen. That is, what are carbon markets and how do they operate? And how is India evolving in the carbon credit market scenario. This is what is the part one. And in the part two, we will be dealing in detail with reference to carbon markets, world scenario, and carbon credits, and how they work. And again, credits versus offsets. How is it going to happen financially and cost wise? And then again, in part three, we'll be discussing in detail on the role of CMA in carbon credits. So all these three parts are kept on three different dates. Part one is on today, that is 18th. Part two is on 25th. Part three is on 26th. So this is a series basically. So one needs to attend all the series to have the grasp of the whole thing about the carbon markets in and around the world, including India. So with that brief background, I would like to now get into the part one aspect of what are carbon markets and how do they operate and how India is evolving in the carbon credit market. That's what I'm going to deal with. So now to start with, let me give you a preamble instead of straight away getting into the topic. Many of us talk about carbon credits, greenhouse emissions, and carbon markets, carbon emissions, etc., etc. But we need to have a clarity on the part of various terms for us to have a complete understanding on the topic. That is the reason. First, a few minutes I will spare on these terminologies and also about the basic concepts for making each and every one of you to understand the concept very clearly. Now, coming to the first topic, basically in the context of carbon credits, what is carbon actually? When we talk about carbon credits, we also need to know what is carbon. So the best definition that I could come across is in the context of carbon credits, carbon refers to carbon dioxide, that is CO2, and other greenhouse gases, that is GHGs. Greenhouse gases are called as GHGs that are released into the atmosphere as a result of human activities, particularly the burning of fossil fuels like coal, oil, and natural gas. These emissions of greenhouse gases contribute to global climate change and the greenhouse effect, which leads to rising global temperatures and associated environmental impacts. So, in short, what are all the carbon credits if we talk about? Before that, we need to understand what is carbon. Carbon is nothing else but emission of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. Okay, those greenhouse gases and all get emitted from the from burning of fossil fuels like coal, oil, and natural gas. So we, in a way, contribute to these carbons and also to these greenhouse gases. So these emissions and the greenhouse gases actually are changing the global climate, and that in turn has a kind of economic impact on us. And that is where to reduce those, I mean to say, emissions and greenhouse gases and carbon dioxide worldwide, all the countries put together, they are working towards a solution to reduce these emissions to make the planet Earth more comfortable for living to all of us, and also to increase the economic productivity of each and every one of us by improving the atmosphere around us. Okay. Then another critical aspect is we talk about greenhouse gases. Okay, we talk about greenhouse gas emissions, etc. But we also need to have a detailed understanding on what are all these greenhouse gases. Greenhouse gases, also abbreviated as GHGs, are the gases in the Earth's atmosphere that have the property of trapping the heat from the sun, leading to the greenhouse effect. That is to say, why it is called as greenhouse gases or greenhouse effect. If you want to know that, generally think like this. On the Earth, you have a lot of greenery. Okay, around that greenery, the temperature gets, I mean to say, onto them and onto Earth. Then some of the a part of the temperature is absorbed by these green effect, but beyond certain level, they also can't absorb that. But instead of sending it back into the atmosphere, that heat will still remain on the Earth's surface, making us feel the grunt. That's why they are called as greenhouse gases. Okay. So that is to say, Earth's atmosphere that have the property of trapping the heat from the sun, leading to the greenhouse effect. Okay, they play a crucial role in regulating the Earth's temperature by allowing sunlight to enter the atmosphere and warm the planet, while preventing some of the heat from escaping back into space. This natural greenhouse effect is essential for maintaining Earth's habitable climate. However, human activities have significantly increased the concentrations of certain greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, contributing to global warming and climate change. Okay. The enhanced level of these greenhouse gases, particularly carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide, have contributed to the warming of the planet, leading to the global climate change. The increase in global temperatures is associated with a wide range of environmental and social impacts, including more frequent and severe heat waves, changing weather patterns, rising sea levels, and disruptions to ecosystems and agriculture. This is what today the Mother Earth is facing across the world, and we are victims because of the carbon and greenhouse gases emissions. And again, now if we look at the impact of carbon and greenhouse gases, okay, we defined what is carbon, what is greenhouse gases, and the main two terms in today's discussion. But what's the impact of these two things on our lives and on the planet, on our day-to-day living needs, requirements, etc.? Let's look at in detail. Okay, carbon dioxide, that is CO2, and other greenhouse gases, GHGs, have significant and far-reaching impacts on the Earth's climate, environment, and human societies. These impacts are primarily associated with global warming and climate change. Here are some of the key effects and consequences of elevated levels of carbon and greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. One, global warming. The most immediate impact of elevated greenhouse gases is global warming. The increased concentration of these gases traps more heat in the Earth's atmosphere, leading to rising global temperatures. This leads to various consequences, including more frequent and severe heat waves. Okay, this we are actually seeing in our day-to-day life. Secondly, climate change. Global warming is a major driver of climate change. It disrupts weather patterns and leads to change in precipitation, temperature, and extreme weather events such as hurricanes, droughts, and floods. Okay. So we find drought scenarios, we find hurricanes in some countries, we find floods unexpectedly. So all these things are happening because of climate change, which is also happening because of global warming. Okay. Now, again, the next thing is melting polar ice and glaciers. Rising temperatures are causing the melting of polar ice caps and glaciers, contributing to rising sea levels. This in turn can lead to coastal flooding and erosion, threatening low-lying coastal communities. In some countries like Indonesia, to an extent, even on the coastal side of India also, we find some of these incidents, not just restricted to India, even in USA, even in some coastal African countries, we find these scenarios. This is all because of global warming and climate change, increasing heat in the atmosphere. Okay. Then the next impact of carbon and greenhouse gases is ocean acidification. Increased carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere also lead to a higher concentration of carbon dioxide dissolving into the world's oceans, causing ocean acidification. This has serious consequences for marine ecosystems, particularly coral reefs and shelled organisms. So look at the impact of carbon and greenhouse gases even on the ocean acidification, and in turn how it is impacting the marine ecosystem, including the marine living organisms. Okay, and then we talk about shifts in the ecosystem. Changing temperatures and precipitation patterns impact ecosystems and the distribution of plant and animal species. This can lead to habitat loss, endangerment, and extinction of various species that we, in fact, are reading on day-to-day basis in newspapers, the extinction of the rare and various species. And we are also finding habitat loss, and we are also finding endangerment to our lives, okay, due to the shifting ecosystems. And then, most importantly, agricultural impacts. Climate change can disrupt agriculture by altering growing seasons, increasing the prevalence of pests and diseases, and causing water scarcity, which can lead to reduced crop yields and food insecurity. This is what is happening. We have, even in India, vast land, I mean to say, holdings. But when it comes to the productivity of these lands, it's quite minuscule, because either we are not having, say, the required water levels in those land tables wherever it is required, or we are finding the prevalence of pests and diseases and water scarcity, of course. And these are all leading to reduced crop yields and, in a way, leading to food insecurity. And if we talk about further impact of carbon and greenhouse gases, it's not ended just there at the agriculture and some other aspects that we have discussed just before. And now we will see some more in-depth impact that carbon and greenhouse gases have. That is health impacts. Heat waves and the spread of diseases associated with the changing climate conditions can have a direct and indirect impact on human health. Vulnerable populations are particularly at risk. If you look at in Mumbai for the past, say, 10 days, a sudden rise in the temperatures has made many people fall sick. Okay. This may be across the country, I don't know, but as far as Mumbai concerned, where I stay, I have seen this. Even I have fallen sick for 1 or 2 days. So this kind of thing is happening not just in India, across the world. It's happening at various points of times, and even in USA, where this is a fall season now, but they are finding very high temperature levels when compared to the normal temperature levels. The same is the case with Europe. The same is the just not the same, but it's the extreme case with the Asia Pacific side. So throughout the world, this global warming is actually killing the people in one way or the other with its impact. Okay, only the degree of its impact is changing from one place to the other places. And now, next important impact is sea level rises. As ice melts and ocean waters expand due to temperature increases, sea levels rise, posing a threat to the coastal communities and infrastructure. This can result in property damage, displacement of people, and the loss of valuable land. Some guests are, I think, kept their mics on. If they can put their mics in muted mode, there won't be any disturbance, please. Yeah, thank you. So the carbon and greenhouse gases impact in a way like they make the sea levels rise, and they cause damage to the coastal communities and infrastructure there, and that in turn spoils the economies over there, displaces the people over there, and the loss of valuable land also takes place. And then we need to talk about the extreme weather. Climate change intensifies extreme weather events such as hurricanes. I dealt earlier also in a lighter way, typhoons and droughts, which can cause significant economic and human losses. And then, if we talk most importantly, the economic consequences, the impact of climate change have economic consequences affecting industries and insurance costs and the overall stability of economies as such. And then water resources. Change in precipitation patterns can affect the availability and distribution of freshwater resources, leading to water scarcity and conflicts of water rights. So this is also a thing which is most happening across the regions in a country, and also across the, I mean to say, countries in the world. Okay. And social and political disruption again. Climate change can exacerbate social inequalities and lead to political conflicts and migration as people are displaced from their homes due to environmental changes. Wherever people find inhabitable for their stay, they tend to migrate from their home locations to some strange or new locations because they feel respite in those new locations. So these are all some of the impacts. Okay. And now let's see country-wise cumulative CO2 emitters, carbon dioxide emitters in the world. The first five are: the highest CO2 in the world is emitted by United States of America. Second is by China. Third is by Russia. Fourth is by Brazil. Then comes Indonesia, Germany, India, UK, Japan. This way, from the highest to the lowest emitters, the list goes. Okay. And I have taken the numbers in terms of their cumulative emissions between 1850 to 2021, the available numbers basically, the billion tons of carbon dioxide that they have emitted into the atmosphere. If you see, the US occupied the highest with 500 billion tons of carbon dioxide, followed by almost 275 billion tons of carbon dioxide by China, and India emitted about 90 billion tons of carbon dioxide. So almost all the top industrialized countries in one way or the other are contributing to this CO2 emissions. There is no exception to any country. Though we say USA, China, Russia kind of countries are most developed, including Germany, but the kind of damage that they are creating to the Mother Earth and the atmosphere as a whole, and in turn the way they are impacting the global climate and the life of each and every one of us has a cost to it. They have advanced, they have industrialized themselves, but that at the cost of human race, that one needs to keep in mind. And again, let's look at the greenhouse gas emissions trend. First, let's look at global greenhouse gas emission by gas. What kind of gases gets emitted? Highest rank wise is carbon dioxide. Okay, 65% emission takes place from fossil fuels and industrial processes. Then comes methane with 16%, and then comes carbon dioxide with 11% from forestry and other land use, and then comes nitrous oxide by about 6%. This is how the gases distribution takes place in terms of their emission into the atmosphere. Now let's look at what kind of sectors are contributing to these gas emissions. I say global greenhouse gas emissions by economic sector. If I take that classification and see, the highest contributor for global greenhouse gas emission in terms of economic sector is the electricity and heat production. The countries which are all generating electricity and heat, they are contributing to highest, that is to say 25% of these gas emissions, global greenhouse gas emissions, followed by agriculture, forestry, and other land use, which is about 24%. And then comes industry, which is contributing to the tune of 21%. And then comes transportation to the tune of 14%. And then other energy sources to the tune of 10%. And then the buildings, that is the real estate activity, contributes to the global greenhouse gas emissions to the extent of around 6%. This is how the industry classification of the gas emissions can be attributed. Now again, let's see greenhouse gas emissions country-wise and sector-wise. So here we are always interested in knowing about, say, 3 countries. As far as I am concerned, one may be interested in many, but I'm interested about China. If you see China electricity heat is contributing to the gas emissions. In this block, if you see in China, electricity heat, and then manufacturing stroke construction, and then industrial processes, and then transportation, agriculture, and then fugitive emissions, and then building activity. These are the things which are contributing to China's greenhouse gas emissions. Then if we see the most advanced country, the United States, what kind of, sector-wise classification that it has. They also have electricity, heat, transportation, building, manufacturing, and then fugitive emissions, and then agriculture. And then let's talk about our own country, India. In India, we also have electricity, heat to the major part of gas emissions, and followed by agriculture, followed by manufacturing and construction, followed by transportation. This is how the distribution of greenhouse gas emissions country-wise and sector-wise could be seen for our understanding purpose. And then economic impact of carbon and greenhouse emissions on the world. What is the economic impact? We are talking too much about this greenhouse gases emissions, carbon dioxide emissions, so fine. But what is its impact in terms of numbers? If we want to see that, according to Dartmouth University, which has conducted studies and came out with data by attributing to the losses in terms of numbers, they told that they said that and they found that five national emitters of greenhouse gases, top five national emitters of greenhouse gases caused $6 trillion in global economic losses through warming from 1990 to 2014. So from 1990 to 2014, which is the research period of Dartmouth University, they found that to the extent of 6 trillion of the global economy has seen the losses due to the global warming. So look at the impact that this global warming is creating in terms of the numbers that we talk about when it comes to the economy that it is losing in terms of its revenue. Okay. Now coming to the same study, emissions from the US and China, the world's two leading emitters, are responsible for global income losses over 1.8 trillion each in the 25 years period from 1990. Again from 1990, if you see for 25 years, 1.8 trillion each losses to the world are contributed by US and China in terms of emitters, and they are called as the two leading emitters of green gases and CO2. Okay, and then economic losses caused by Russia, India, and Brazil individually exceeded $500 billion each from the same years. India, of course, also has had its contribution to the tune of 500 billion. Okay, and then the $6 trillion in cumulative losses attributable to the five countries equals about 11% of annual global GDP within the study period. This research provides an answer to the question of whether there is a scientific basis for climate liability claims. The answer is yes. This is what Dartmouth University in its research studies has concluded with the help of the numbers. And now let's talk about again in continuation of our quest to know the impact of carbon and greenhouse gases. The impact of carbon and greenhouse gases on individual countries can vary widely depending on range of factors, including geographical location, economic structure, and population density. While every country is affected by global climate change, some regions experience more severe consequences than others. I just take a small break and I just come back to you in a second. I'm sorry, I'm back. Yeah. Impact of carbon and greenhouse gases in continuity, as we are discussing, the impacts of carbon and greenhouse gases on individual countries can vary widely depending on a range of factors, including geographical location, climate, economic structure, and population density. While every country is affected by global climate change, some regions experience more severe consequences than others. In general overview of the impact of carbon and GHG greenhouse gases on few different countries, taking into account their global geographical and socio-economic characteristics, what we can narrate is like this. In the case of United States is one of the world's largest emitters of global greenhouse gases. The impacts of climate change vary across regions. The Western US faces increased risks of wildfires and prolonged droughts, while coastal areas are threatened by sea level rise and increased hurricane intensity, and the Midwest may experience more extreme weather events impacting agriculture. The country is also dealing with the consequences of more frequent and severe heat waves and flooding events. Okay, that's about United States. Now let's look at China. As the world's largest emitter of CO2, China faces challenges related to air pollution, smog, and water scarcity. Climate change is impacting agriculture, particularly in the northern China, and exacerbating the risks of flooding and droughts. Additionally, the country is investing heavily in renewable energy and afforestation efforts to combat these issues. So as we are covering the leading countries, next comes India. India in what way it is experiencing this carbon, CO2 and greenhouse gas emission and their impact? If you see, India experiences extreme weather events like heat waves and intense monsoons, which can lead to water scarcity and damage to agriculture. Rising sea levels pose a threat to coastal areas, including major cities. The country, of course, is making efforts to transition to clean energy and increase adaptation measures. Then, if we talk about small island nations like the Maldives, Kiribati, and Tuvalu are particularly vulnerable to sea level rise. These nations face the prospect of losing land and being displaced by the rising waters, which is a major existential threat. Now let's talk about the African nations. Many African countries experiences challenges related to water scarcity, desertification, and agricultural disruption. Then climate change can exacerbate food insecurity and migration patterns. That's the reason we see most migration happening from the African side to the developed nations even now. And then again, Arctic nations, if you see, countries like Canada, Russia, and the Scandinavian nations are experiencing rapid warming in the Arctic region, leading to the melting of permafrost and changes in ecosystems. This affects indigenous populations and can lead to increased shipping traffic and resource extraction. And then if we talk about the European nations, European countries face a range of climate impacts, including heat waves, heavy rainfall, and flooding events. Countries like the Netherlands are particularly concerned about sea level rise and have developed extensive flood protection systems. And then comes Brazil. Brazil deals with deforestation in the Amazon rainforest, a critical carbon sink which contributes to both national and global climate change. Changes in rainfall patterns can impact agriculture and water resources. This is how, friends, continents and the important countries are facing the damage due to the carbon and greenhouse gas emissions. And again, friends, let's look at now the dangers of carbon and greenhouse gas emissions to mankind. The dangers of carbon and greenhouse gas emissions to the mankind are significant and multifaceted. These emissions are the primary drivers of global climate change, which has far-reaching and potentially catastrophic consequences for human societies. Here are some of the key dangers that I'm going to narrate to you all. One is climate change. Elevated levels of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases lead to global warming, which in turn results in climate change. The impacts of climate change includes more frequent and severe heat waves, droughts, floods, and extreme weather events. These events can cause widespread damage to infrastructure, agriculture, and human communities. And then comes, my friends, rising sea levels. As the Earth's temperature increases, polar ice caps and glaciers melt, and seawater expands due to higher temperatures. This leads to rising sea levels, which threaten coastal communities, infrastructure, and ecosystem. Low-lying coastal regions are particularly vulnerable to these dangers. And then comes the water scarcity. Changes in precipitation patterns and increasing temperatures can lead to water scarcity. This can impact agriculture, drinking water supplies, and industrial processes, potentially leading to conflicts over water resources. And then comes food insecurity. Climate change can disrupt agricultural systems, affecting crop yields and food production. This in turn can lead to food shortages, increased food prices, and malnutrition, particularly in vulnerable regions. Then comes health impacts. The changing climate can have direct and indirect health impacts. Heat waves can cause heat-related illnesses and deaths, and altered weather patterns can lead to the spread of diseases such as malaria and dengue fever. Air pollution associated with burning fossil fuels also contributes to respiratory illnesses. Then comes displacements and migration. Climate change induced events like sea level rise, extreme weather, and droughts can displace people from their homes. This leads to climate induced migration, creating challenges for both displaced population and the areas receiving migrants. And again, economic costs. The economic consequences of climate change are substantial. Extreme weather events and ongoing climate-related challenges can result in billions of dollars in damages and losses. Adaptation and recovery efforts are costly. And then environmental losses. Climate change can cause habitat loss, coral reef bleaching, and the extinction of plant and animal species. These losses can disrupt ecosystem and impact biodiversity. National security risks. Climate change can exacerbate existing social and political tensions and may contribute to conflicts over resources, displacement, and food security, leading to national and international security risks. And then inequality and injustice. Vulnerable populations, including low-income communities and indigenous groups, are often disproportionately affected by climate change. This can exacerbate social inequalities and environmental injustices. This is how it affects the mankind. Now, to make you all more comfortable with the concepts, let me give you the pictorial representation of carbon and greenhouse gas emissions. Friends, this is how this greenery with CO2 in between is a pictorial representation of greenhouse gas emission. Okay. And this is a factory location which is emitting gases into the air and causing damage to the atmosphere. And here it's a power generation plant which is causing damage to our atmosphere and to our living. And again, this kind of emissions are three types, friends. They are called as direct with scope 1, indirect with scope 2, indirect with scope 3. What are all they? Let's look at it. Okay, scope 1 direct. Emissions from on-site sources. When some emission takes place from a particular on-site, then it is called as direct on-site source of emission. Okay, that is to say a power plant location or a factory location, whatever it is. Okay, and then again, scope 3 indirect. If we look at scope 2, if we look at indirect emission from energy utilities, wherever we find the emission happening from the energy plants and utility plants, such kind of emissions are scope 2 indirect emissions. Scope 3 indirect emissions are the chain of supplies or services. When they emit, they are called as indirect scope 3 emissions. Thus, emissions are scope wise classified into 3. The first one is exclusively on-site emission from factories. Okay. So this is how the pictorial representation which can be seen. Now we will talk about the worldwide policy response to carbon and greenhouse gas emissions. Okay, greenhouse gas emissions, carbon are creating a lot of damage to the world, humankind, and to the economy. So what's the policy response? What the governments across the world are doing to combat and to control these emissions, and what kind of policy measures that they are taking to reduce these emissions is what we are going to focus in 1 or 2 slides. Yeah, to know that what's exactly happening now on this front. The worldwide policy response to carbon and greenhouse gas emissions, friends, is basically primarily shaped by international agreements, national policies, and regional initiatives. Some key elements of the global policy response to address carbon and GHG emissions are: one, the Paris Agreement. The Paris Agreement, adopted in 2015 under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, is a landmark international treaty aimed at limiting global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, with an aspirational goal of limiting it to 1.5 degrees Celsius. This is the objective of Paris Treaty. Okay. Signatory countries have committed to setting and achieving nationally determined contributions to reduce their emissions and enhance their climate resilience. The agreement emphasizes international cooperation and transparency in reporting emissions and progresses. Then comes, friends, then what's the next initiative? Apart from Paris Agreement, what else other initiatives that the world policymakers and the governments have taken? If we quest into that, then nationally determined contribution, NDCs, under the Paris Agreement, each participating country submits its NDC, that is nationally determined contribution, outlining its emissions, outlining its emission reduction targets, strategies, and actions. These contributions are updated periodically to reflect a country's evolving climate goals and efforts. Okay, this is the outcome of Paris Agreement, which made every country to keep its, which made every country to work on its own goals to reduce these carbon and global greenhouse gas emissions. Okay, then another initiative is carbon pricing. Many countries and regions have implemented carbon pricing mechanisms such as carbon taxes and cap and trade systems to put a price on carbon emissions. These policies encouraged industries and individuals to reduce emissions and transition to cleaner alternatives. Then the worldwide policymakers also focused on renewable energy targets. Numerous countries have set up targets for increasing the share of renewable energy sources in the energy mix. These targets promote the transition away from fossil fuels and towards a sustainable energy. And then another option that policymakers opted for is energy efficiency regulations. Governments have established energy efficiency standards and regulations for industries, buildings, and appliances to reduce energy consumption and emissions. Then, ratification of international agreements. Countries around the world have ratified international agreements related to global house green emissions, including the Montreal Protocol, that is ozone layer protection, then the Kyoto Protocol, which sets emission reduction targets for developed countries, and the Kigali Amendment, that is HFC phase down. Okay. Then the policymakers focused on afforestation and reforestation. Policies and programs are for promoting afforestation, planting trees on previously non-forested lands, and reforestation, replanting trees in deforested areas to sequester carbon and mitigate emissions. Okay, and then the focus is also given to research and innovation, investment in research and development of clean energy technologies, carbon capture and storages, and sustainable practices is a common policy approach to drive innovation and reduce emissions. That is where most of the treaty signed countries are working now on reducing the GHG emissions. And then, friends, comes the climate adaptation strategies. Many countries have developed strategies to adapt the consequences of climate change, including infrastructure improvements, water management, and disaster preparedness. These are all the policy responses to the carbon and global greenhouse emissions. Okay. And apart from that, even the policymakers did not end their response to the damage. They also have gone further and worked on green finance initiatives. That is to say, policymakers and financial institutions across the world are working to channelize investments towards sustainable projects and industries through mechanisms like green bonds and sustainable banking practices. Okay. Then comes public awareness and education. Governments and organizations are engaged in campaigns to raise for public awareness about climate change, encourage responsible behavior, and foster support for climate action. Okay. And then carbon disclosure and reporting. Regulations and voluntary programs require businesses to disclose their emissions data and climate-related risks, fostering corporate responsibility and transparency. Bilateral and regional initiatives. Countries often engage in regional and bilateral agreements and initiatives to collaborate on emissions reduction efforts, technology transfer, and adaptation strategies. The global policy response to carbon and global greenhouse emissions is dynamic and it is still evolving. So there is no end to it. It continuously evolves. Countries and regions continue to define their strategies, raise their ambitions, and collaborate on international climate action. The urgency of addressing climate change has led to a growing commitment to reduce emissions and transition toward a more sustainable and low carbon global economy. And this is what is the background, guys, I have given you. I told you in my preamble what is carbon, what is global greenhouse emission, what is its impact on economy, what are the various sources of those damages, and again, what kind of responses, what kind of policy measures that the governments across the world have taken, and there, from the policy measures that the world across the governments have taken, the carbon markets have emerged. Now we are dealing with what are these carbon markets. Okay. Carbon markets, necessity that originated out of danger to mitigate the same through incentivization. Okay. The concept of carbon markets, also known as emissions trading or cap and trade systems, has its origins in the economic principles of market-based environmental policy. The basic idea behind carbon markets is to create financial incentives for reducing greenhouse gas emissions by putting a price on carbon. The history and development of carbon markets can be traced to several key milestones. Purely to say, the carbon markets have evolved to mitigate the danger of the CO2 and global greenhouses emissions and their danger and their impact on the atmosphere. So governments wants to incentivize those people, whoever reduces their emissions, by creating certain set of standards that these standards needs to be followed. If they are followed, you are incentivized. Okay, that incentivization will be through a market mechanism. If you don't follow, you have to be penalized. That penalization will be buying the carbon credits that somebody, whoever has saved the nature, will sell his credits to you for penalizing the nature with your more emissions beyond the set limit. By buying that, you will be incentivizing the guy, whoever has created the credit. So it's a credit set of mechanism that the policymakers have created between the wrongdoers and the righteous people who keep their emissions within their control. Okay, so there some of the concepts which have evolved over a period of time. If you see, there were early theoretical concepts between 1960 and 1970. I'll just briefly dwell on that so that you will all be aware on those things. The economic concept of using market mechanisms to address environmental problems gained momentum in 1960s and 1970s. Economists like Ronald Coase and Martin Weitzman proposed the idea of using market-based approaches such as tradable permits to address pollution and externalities. And then US Acid Rain Program 1990. The concept of emissions trading was first implemented at a significant scale with the US Acid Rain Program established under the Clean Air Amendments of 1990. This program aimed to reduce sulfur dioxide emissions, which caused acid rain in USA. It allowed power plants to buy and sell emission allowances, creating the first large-scale cap and trade system. Okay, I will deal with what is the cap and trade system slightly little later. And then the Kyoto Protocol 1997, the Kyoto Protocol adopted in 1997 introduced international carbon trading mechanisms as a part of global efforts to address climate change. The protocol established three market-based mechanisms: the Clean Development Mechanism, Joint Implementation, and Emission Trading, allowing countries to trade emissions credits and invest in emission reduction projects in other nations. These are all the starting points for the carbon markets to evolve. So we can say the carbon markets evolved over a period of time. Okay, thus the carbon markets originated. And then came the European Union Emission Trading System, EU ETS 2005. The EU ETS launched in 2005, one of the largest and most prominent carbon markets in the world. It covers CO2 emissions from a wide range of sectors, including power generation and heavy industry across the European Union. The system has undergone several phases aiming to reduce emissions and promote the transition to a low carbon economy. Then came the global growth and expansion. Carbon markets have since expanded to various regions and countries, including Australia, New Zealand, China, South Korea, and parts of the United States. These markets operate with different designs and scales, but share the goal of reducing global greenhouse gas emissions through market-based mechanisms. Then came Paris Agreement. I'll just take some water, if you can permit me. Paris Agreement 2015 also contributed a lot for the evolution of carbon markets. The Paris Agreement solidified the role of market mechanism in global climate action. Article 6 of the agreement provides a framework for international cooperation and carbon market mechanisms. Those specific rules and guidelines for these mechanisms are still being developed through international negotiations. And friends, carbon markets have gained attention as a practical means to reduce global greenhouse emissions while providing flexibility and cost effectiveness to businesses and governments. By putting a price on carbon, these markets incentivize emission reductions and encourage the development of cleaner technologies. However, their effectiveness depends on robust regulatory framework, transparent accounting, and continuous monitoring and oversight to prevent market manipulation and ensure real emission reductions. Then, friends, what are the carbon markets? Carbon markets, also known as emission trading systems or cap and trade systems, are market-based mechanisms designed to reduce greenhouse emissions. They operate by placing a price on carbon emissions, thereby creating economic incentives for organizations, governments, and individuals to limit their carbon dioxide, CO2, and other global house green emissions. These markets help facilitate the transition to a low carbon economy and are considered a key tool in the fight against climate change. Here is how carbon markets typically work. Emission caps. In a carbon market, a regulatory authority, such as government or international organization, sets a limit or cap on the total amount of greenhouse gas emissions that can be released within a specific jurisdiction, sector, or period. This cap is usually based on emissions reduction targets and aims to align with climate goals. Then comes emission allowances. To comply with the emission cap, organizations and entities within the jurisdictions receive or purchase a fixed number of emission allowances or permits. Each allowance represents a specific quantity of emissions, often measured in metric tons of CO2 or its equivalent in the global house green emissions. And again, emissions trading, how it happens. Organizations that reduce their emissions below their allotted allowances can sell the excess allowances to those who are all exceeding their allotted emission limits. This creates a market where emission allowances are bought and sold, allowing companies to financially benefit from reducing emissions, and those with higher emissions to purchase allowances to meet compliance requirements. Price on carbon. The market establishes a price for emission allowances based on supply and demand, like how we see in the stock markets or in commodities market, how the supply and demand derives the price for the stock or underlying commodity. Similar way, the carbon emissions, the penalty, the cost involved in that will be traded for the credits in the carbon credit markets. Okay, this price on carbon encourages businesses to invest in cleaner technologies practices. Compliance and reporting. Participants in the carbon market are required to measure and report their emissions accurately. This information is crucial for ensuring transparency and accountability within the system. And then flexibility and innovation. Friends, carbon markets allow organizations to adopt a variety of strategies to meet their emission reduction targets. They can choose to reduce emissions, buy allowances, or invest in carbon offset projects that remove or reduce an equivalent amount of GHGs from the atmosphere. So this is till now, like in a film, till intermission, one kind of story runs. After that, the second, it will be a completely altogether a changer. Similarly, henceforth, my presentation will be pictorial to make you understand better the theoretical aspects. Okay. So would you like to have a break as we have already completed 1 hour time, or you want me to go ahead? Admin, please to advise on this. WIRC admin, will I continue? Should I continue?
No, you can continue, sir.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Yeah. Now let me talk about the second part of our presentation. We are just beginning from the second half of our presentation. Okay. What are the carbon markets? In carbon markets, friends, emission trading happens. That is to say, cap and trade. What is this cap and trade? What is this emission trading? Friends, let us look at it this way. There is an emitter 1, there is an emitter 2, as I have shown in the picture here. Please see the picture and follow it on the screen. There is an emitter 1, there is an emitter 2. So emitter 1, for emitter 1 and emitter 2, there is always an emission cap kept by the regulatory. That is to say, a government, local government or central government, whatever it may be, under whose jurisdiction the particular emitter comes in. For them, the emission cap is kept. Now let's look at the diagram, friends. In the diagram, for the emitter 1, when you compare the emitter 1 with the emission cap, he is well within the emission cap. Okay. But whereas emitter 2, this pink portion, if you see, he has exceeded his emission cap. This green portion is his allowed level, and this pink portion is exceeded level. So he exceeded, the emitter 1 is well within the limits. So how these two guys trade? Let me explain you the trading mechanism. Okay, the emitter one, because he is within the emissions cap, he will get a credit. Okay, that credit is like to his demand account. One credit he got, let us say. Okay, and this guy excessively emitted, so he needs to compensate the governments by paying for that emission, okay, because he caused damage to our atmosphere. Okay, that is the reason this emitter 2 purchases the credit from the emitter 1 who has the credit from him, and the excess emission whatever he did gets compensated with the purchase whatever he does. That is to say, to make the emitter 2 disincentivized from emitting more emission into the atmosphere, there is a cost put on to it. That cost benefit is going to the person who is well within the emission cap, and a market of equity is well created between these two players. I just showed you for two players. This happens with umpteen number of players in a market mechanism. Okay, that is what we call it as carbon market trading. The carbon market trading happens through emission trading, and this is also called as cap and trade. Cap and trade because emission is capped, and whoever is well within the cap will get credits. Whoever is not well within the cap, they have to buy. They are minus credit. They are in debit, so they need to buy and level up themselves. So this is what is the carbon market in simplified terms. Okay, I just want to make you all comfortable with these things. If you have any questions, you can ask me at the end of the presentation. We have almost 30 minutes for that. And then friends, what are the carbon markets? How the pricing is done? Earlier when we are dealing with theoretical aspects, I told you it's a play of demand and supply. That is to say, there are more gas emitters, there are less, I mean to say, these savers, I mean these emitter one like people, emission cap people. So then there will be a premium for credits in the market. So the credit gets more premium into the market, and it's like market driven, demand and supply driven. Okay. So carbon pricing, as I told you, you continue emitting and having to pay for those emissions, and you reduce the emissions to avoid paying. These are the two options available to the players in the market. And friends, let's take a pulse of how the carbon pricing is currently in the market. Currently, in the sense, it's of 2021, but there is 10% plus or minus variation to this. But I have taken this authentic data from OECD. So let's look at this. United Kingdom. This is per ton CO2 price. That is to say, you excessively thrown CO2 to the extent of 1 ton into the atmosphere, then that guy, that emitter in United Kingdom has to pay for 1 ton about 95.95 euros, friends. In France, it is 93.10. In Germany, it was about 78.22. In Japan, it was about 31.59. Australia, 19.23. United States, 15.23. India, 14.43. China, 8.59. Russia, 5.60. Brazil, 0.58. This is how the spectrum varied between United Kingdom to Brazil. In United Kingdom, the carbon credits have highest, I mean to say, the price for the guys who are in debit. But whereas carbon credits are available at a cheaper rate in Brazil for those who are defaulters in keeping the, I mean to say, gases under control. Yeah. This is how the market is. And friends, again, on the part of carbon pricing, this carbon pricing, though it's a function of demand and supply, but it's broad-based across as many sectors as possible. Currently, friends, each country has its own policy to cover the number of sectors the number of industries, the number of segments that they can put under this carbon credit trading. Okay, so in every country, these sectors are varying. So we cannot universalize the sectors altogether, okay, because the market is still evolving. That is the reason this pricing goes in different ways in terms of its mechanism. That is one broad-based across as many sectors as possible, and then a common price across the country and sufficiently stringent to meet the 2030 emission targets and accompanied by supportive intergovernmental processes. These are all the four ways in which the pricing gets fixed for the carbon credits, my friends, keeping in mind the demand and supply. Okay. And again, friends, see what are all the carbon compliance and reporting. Carbon markets are of two types, friends. One is compliance carbon markets. One is voluntary carbon market. What is compliance carbon market? Mandatory systems regulated by government organizations to cap emissions for specific industries. In a compliance carbon markets, it is the government which caps the emission levels. So whoever is within that level, they get credits. Whoever is not there, they get debits. The debit guys needs to buy from the credit guys. That is the compliance carbon market. Whereas this compliance carbon market is of the size of $899 billion, friends. Okay, that was in 2021 authentic figure, but by 2023 it has increased almost to I can say 1 trillion. Okay, now voluntary carbon markets. What are all these voluntary carbon markets? Where carbon credits can be purchased by those that voluntarily want to compensate for their emissions. Here there is no regulation, but under CSR, corporate social responsibility, or industrial citizenship, in some countries, people voluntarily think that they are emitting, so they need to compensate. Those guys also contribute and buy these carbon credits to incentivize their governments in order to make the governments create good infrastructure. So in that context, there is a voluntary carbon credit market also. In that voluntary carbon credit market, the market size is $2 billion, very small. That is to say, voluntarily, when you leave the option to the person, then whatever it comes, even if it is of 2 billion size, it's still significant. That shows there are good people across the world who are all truthful even to their heart, and they still pay and compensate for their wrongdoing to their government. Yeah. Now, again, these carbon markets are flexible and innovative also, because first and foremost, these carbon markets are run by market-based mechanisms. That's why there is a demand and supply in place, flexibility, and local relevance of laws in terms of caps, and then least cost reduction in the economy. Okay. And then again, there is about setting a price on the carbon, and there that market goes by predictability, like how stock market in stock market, how a stock moves up on future anticipation, and also on discounting the future, and on future anticipation of profits and happenings in the country, economy, industry, and then the business. When we take these three aspects, any of these aspects can trigger the price for the stock. The similar way for the carbon credit also, where a price is set on a carbon, the long-term predictability and investment patterns and incentivizations and innovation and abatements also lead to the price of carbon per ton, basically. Then host of co-benefits, friends, reduced air pollution. So with this kind of carbon market kept in place, we, the ordinary people, what kind of benefits we are getting, friends? That is, we are co-beneficiaries of the whole program made by these policymakers due to these carbon markets. That is, reduced air pollution, good health for us, resources efficiency, and energy security, tech innovation, and job creation is happening due to these carbon markets, because they are flexible and they are innovative. And friends, carbon markets and the way they operate, that we are going to see now. Carbon markets. Some of the most well-known carbon markets include European Union Emission Trading System, California Cap and Trade Program, Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, Kyoto Protocol Mechanism. So carbon markets are designed to promote cost-effective emissions reductions and encourage the adoption of cleaner technologies, making them valuable tool in addressing climate change and achieving international emission reduction goals. Okay. Now I will take you through how the European Union emission trading system works. Okay. EU carbon trading. The scheme is compulsory for all 27 EU countries and 4 others. Emission cap is to decrease 1.74% annually. Allowances are auctioned or given away, and more than 11,000 power stations and industrial plants are included in the trading program of carbon credits under the EU ETS trading mechanism system. Okay, here the cap and trade system. Here in EU ETS exchange, how the trading happens is, as I told you, installation 1, factory 1, factory 2, again cap is kept. The guy who is within the cap gets credit. The guy whoever exceeded the cap and emitted higher than the cap will buy because he is in deficit. So the trading happens through a trading terminal. That is, terminal is called as EU ETS for the European 27 nations. Okay. And then again, the trading system, if you want to see the dynamics of the trading system, practice of emissions trading in the EU ETS, importantly, facility operators which emit CO2 must present a valid ETS certificate for each ton of CO2 they emit. The facilities are allocated a certain quota of CO2 certificates at the beginning of the year. If the CO2 emission exceeds the amount of allocated certificates of a plant operations, they have to buy certificates in the emission allowance trading. The ton of carbon dioxide saved, also known as 1 EUA, thus receives direct monetary value that is determined on the basis of supply and demand. As I have explained time and again, twice or thrice, I think I have explained the surplus guy and the deficit guy and how the trading takes place. The trading happens through a screen. So for that screen, they have a OTC in Europe, and they also have ECX, which is called as European Climate Exchange in London. Okay, and they also have their branches, the exchange branches in Vienna. Okay, and in one more place, I think they have. Okay, they in those exchanges every day at 11 a.m. this trading aspect starts there, and they run continuously throughout the day. And like stock market, there also the trading happens for the carbon credits. And there earlier I told you almost how many industries, 11,000 power stations and industrial plants, they are included in that. So they become the listed candidates on this ECX, that is European Climate Exchange. Okay, and then comes California Cap and Trade Program. In California, also they have an exchange. There also the cap and trade program follows the same method. Excess emitter, low emitter will have credits, excess emitter will have to buy. So they buy through a market scheme mechanism in California cap and trade program, and the trade happens through screen again here. Okay, they trade. And again, some of the leading carbon exchanges I want to introduce to you all. One is Air Carbon Exchange, ACX. This is the easiest and most streamlined platform, friends. This was started in 2019 in Singapore, and it has a client base of 130 organizations listed on it. And trading happens on T0 trade execution, clearing and settlement basis. Okay. And then ACX, the bid offer exchange functions like a commodities trading exchange, creating price transparency. And it uses digital warehouse that lets investors easily manage assets within their portfolios, like our demat account like kind of thing. You buy a credit, it goes to your demat account. Like you sell a credit, it gets debited from your account, and everything is online, so one can easily trade without any hassles. Okay. And again, this ACX of Singapore won the best carbon exchange in environmental finances as per 2021 BCM rankings. Over 62% of ACX client volume comes from Singapore, Southeast Asia, while greater than 55% of the projects originate from Australia on this exchange. And then, friends, comes the CTX exchange. Okay, the CTS exchange is a air carbon, is a member-based spot exchange with various participants. They range from individual brokers and project developers to big corporations. They can list their credits directly to CTX from their registry account and then trading digitally from anywhere in the world. Okay, CTX allows trading credits from several different industry standards, including gold standards, whereas verified carbon standards, and the United Nations Clean Development Mechanism, the biocarbon registry, etc. These are all the various standards in terms of emissions that we need to keep in mind. So market is available for all these kinds of different kinds of standards. Okay. Carbon credit exchanges in CTX credits are available in 4 currencies: GB, Great Britain pound, Australian dollar, US dollar, and euro. CTS is expanding fast with current locations in UK, Australia, Europe, and Asia. It covers projects in Africa, Asia, Europe, and North and South America also. Of course, we can also trade if we want through CTX. Okay, keep in mind. And then Taucan protocol. Taucan protocol means, don't think that it's a protocol. Taucan protocol is the name of the exchange. Okay, this is also an exchange where, like a crypto, here one carbon credit is treated like a one crypto token. So like how we trade in cryptos, if you are familiar is fine, otherwise we'll deal on that on some other day. I can explain you in detail how the crypto trading happens and all. Every carbon credit is treated like a crypto, and through blockchain mechanism they trade these carbon credits through Taucan protocol. Okay, this is also called as the most liquid carbon to crypto market. Okay, and again, Expansive, the most intelligent exchange for ESG inclusive commodities. This is US based. Expansive was born out of the wedlock between itself and ASIS platform CBL in 2019. Expansive is the global marketplace to trade various data-driven ESG inclusive commodities. Okay, one of its main business units is the CBL, the largest spot exchange for ESG commodities. These include carbon, renewable energy certificates, and digital natural gas. On Expansive CBL platform, clients can trade a broad range of carbon offset projects from major registries around the world. The long list of customers include big organizations like airlines and major financial institutions. Okay, and then of the leading carbon exchanges trends, what people like across the world, some of those points I wanted to enlighten you all. On carbon exchange, ACX platform token is the easiest and most streamlined instrument for carbon credits trading. A proven capacity of traditional commodities trading like it happens, plus the speed and efficiency of blockchain technology so that you are assured and your monies are assured. Then comes the CTX. These exchange tradings, as I told, are available in 4 currencies: GBP, AUD, USD, and EUR. The least credit trading volume is 100 tons of CO2e only. Most cost-effective spot trading exchange, and we spoke about Taucan, created the most liquid tokenized carbon credit exchange like crypto. Credit verification and determination prevents double counting. Taucan members can set the parameters for carbon pool granting. Expansive CBL, most intelligent data-driven carbon exchange, dominant digital platform with highest trading volume, and then project level information in the order book for more transparency to this exchange also happens. Though I covered these 4 leading exchanges, my friends, world across, there are many other exchanges, including European Energy Exchange, Chicago Climate Exchange, California Carbon Market, Emission Trading Systems in China, ETS China, it is called as, and then Korean Exchange, KRX. In Korean Exchange, the innovative thing is that instead of having a separate exchange for the carbon credits, what they did is, like our BSE on their KRX, whatever like our BSE and NSE, they have a regular trading platform for stocks. On that only, through additional software, they have created a platform for carbon trading also. Maybe for India, that can be a good case study in future when we go in for trading of carbon credits in live. Okay. So likewise, there are many exchanges. And now comes, okay, we spoke about world, we spoke about all those exchanges. Okay, fine, I'm an Indian, but what about my country and its place in terms of carbon credit markets? That's what we are interested in. So this is where I'm starting now to take you across with a small introduction for me to continue with the part 2 later on. Okay, India's evolving carbon credit market. Friends, India's decarbonization target. At COP26, India's 2030 decarbonization target was announced. The highly ambitious goal includes decarbonizing energy to 50% and achieving 500 gigawatts of fossil fuel free generating capacity by 2030. So here we are slightly futuristic in nature, but as on today, we are trying our best, but our mechanism is going to evolve, but there is a good beginning that is made. Okay, this was a very large increase above its Paris commitments, far more than expected. That way, India commitments wise is making very good futuristic commitments. That's good for all of us to work towards that endeavor. And then energy usage in India, the electricity sector in India has undergone rapid transformation in recent decades. The country has successfully electrified all households, as government claims. There is adequate power generating capacity whose optimal utilization is facilitated by an integrated national grid. The per capita electricity consumption in India stands at 1208 kilowatt hours, up from 559 kilowatt hours in 2001. This would increase at least 3 times as India's economic development gathers greater momentum and living standard of its citizens rise in the coming decades. Reliable, affordable, quality, round-the-clock power supply to all is the goal to be achieved in the next few years. Yes, we need to commend the government to a certain extent. Yes, they endeavored to achieve these standards. They were successful, we can say, yes. And then India's net zero transition. India is now committed to the energy transition of decarbonization and achieving a state of net zero emission. India has made remarkable progress in recent years. It now has the 5th largest solar and 4th largest wind power capacity in the world, with its total capacity being over 100 gigawatts. Though the share of renewables in total electricity generation is now over 10%, more than 70% of the country's electricity is still generated by fossil fuels. This 70% of electricity generation in India still through fossil fuels is the greatest danger for India, causing 500 billion to 750 billion losses to us in terms of our economic growth. So, what is the status of the carbon markets in India? In the pursuit of greener and sustainable future, India has taken a momentous step by introducing the carbon credit trading schemes, CCTS. This pioneering scheme brought into effect through Energy Conservation Amendment Bill 2022, which empowers the central government to establish a carbon trading framework. With this CCTS, India aims to create a thriving domestic carbon market, encouraging industries and entities to reduce their carbon emissions through a market-based approach. As India endeavors to combat climate change and achieve its emission reduction goals, a comprehensive analysis of the potential challenges and the road ahead for this innovative carbon credit trading scheme is imperative. The genesis of Indian carbon market, if we look at it, the concept of emission trading revolves around the notion of countries trading excess emissions units to aid others in meeting their emission targets. India's carbon market has been gradually evolving, gaining substantial impetus from the Ministry of Power to the introduction of CCTS. Ministry of Power recent carbon credit trading scheme 2023 aims at creating a domestic market for tracking and trading carbon credits. This policy is a step in the right direction for setting up India's compliance and voluntary carbon markets. So friends, in India, the market is just opening up with our Power Ministry allowing carbon credit trading scheme, CCTS, only in 2023. They have kept certain targets for the trading to start with. So that we will see in this slide. In India, the center is planning to set up the Indian carbon market by establishing a national framework that will help in decarbonizing the domestic economy. The draft framework for Indian Carbon Credit Scheme 2023 was recently notified by the Union government. The Bureau of Energy Efficiency functioning under the Ministry of Power has been tasked to develop the carbon trading scheme in tandem with the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. The ICM will have the following benefits. It will help India lower the emission intensity of its GDP by 45% by 2030 compared to the 2005 levels, thereby meeting its NDC target related to its global climate commitments. And ICM would help in decarbonizing the commercial and industrial segments in line with India's net zero by 2070. It will give a fillip to energy transition due to its greater scope for covering the country's potential energy segments. GHG emissions, intensity targets, and benchmarks would would be developed in sync with the domestic emissions trajectory according to the climate goals. Although ICM would be regulated, it will offer flexibility to companies in hard-to-abate segments to augment the GHG emission effects through carbon market credits. It will also create more awareness, change, and innovation across hard-to-abate industries. It could help attract finance and technology for sustainable projects that can generate carbon credits. And again, what are all the benefits of carbon markets in India, friends? Financial incentives. Carbon markets establish a financial incentive system where the entities are allotted emission limits and can trade emission permits. This encourages companies to reduce emissions below their limits and penalize the guys whoever exceed the emissions. And cost-effective reductions. Carbon markets prioritize cost-effective emission reductions. Companies that can reduce emissions more easily and at lower cost are incentivized to do so, leading to overall emission reduction at lower economic cost. Business flexibility. Carbon markets provide business with flexibility in choosing how to reduce emissions. They can invest in cleaner technologies, improve energy efficiency, or purchase carbon credits from emission reduction projects elsewhere, allowing for a diverse range of strategies. And then clean tech promotion. These markets stimulate the development and adoption of cleaner technologies and practices. Companies are motivated to innovate and invest in technologies that reduce emissions to lower their compliance costs in the carbon market. Support for sustainability. Carbon markets generate funds for sustainable projects that reduce emissions such as renewable energy, afforestation, reforestation, and energy efficiency projects. These projects earn carbon credits that can be sold in the market, attracting investments. Climate goal alignment. Carbon markets can be tailored to align with countries' climate goals and international commitments, helping nations to meet their emission reduction targets, such as those set in Paris Agreement, by creating a mechanism for tracking and reducing emissions. Transparency and accountability. Participation in carbon markets requires accurate measurement and reporting of emissions. This leads to greater transparency and accountability in tracking and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Revenue generation. Governments can generate revenue through carbon markets by auctioning emission permits or imposing carbon taxes. This revenue can be reinvested in sustainability initiatives or used for other public purposes. Additionally, companies can earn revenue by selling carbon credits. For instance, Tesla, the electric car maker, sold carbon credits to legacy car manufacturers to the tune of $518 million just in the first quarter of 2021. So carbon credit selling is also one of the revenue models that can evolve for the Indian companies going forward. Okay. And friends, India has finalized its list of activities to be considered. India's list, according to Paris Agreement, are 13 industries include renewable energy with storage, only store component, solar thermal power, offshore wind, green hydrogen, compressed biogas, emerging mobility solutions like fuel cells, and high-end technology for energy efficiency. This apart, my friends, the sustainable aviation fuel, best available technologies for process improvement in hard-to-abate sectors, tidal energy, ocean thermal energy, ocean salt gradient energy, ocean wave energy, and ocean current energy, high voltage direct current transmission in conjunction with the renewable energy projects, green ammonia and carbon, and utilization and storage. These are all the industries identified for carbon credit trading in India going forward. It means any entity which can earn and accumulate credits through these selected cleaner activities, and those credits can be traded on global platform, not just the Indian platform which the government is going to create, but we can also trade these credits on the global platform. Under the mechanism, high emitting industries entities can buy credits from those who earned it through adopting those listed activities. Okay. And then the notification of India's carbon credit is to be followed by about 6 months. That is to say, in June 2023, roughly about some day, this notification has come in. And from about there, about 6 months, during which market codes and regulations will be set down. The government is working on setting down the codes, market codes and regulations. Okay, maybe institutions like ours can also play a greater role by volunteering to the government, that we can also help them in creating these codes and regulations. Okay, and then actual trades of carbon credits on Indian exchanges are about 18 months away. So we are just 18 months away from carbon credits trading from our Indian exchanges. Okay, the ball is all set. We are just about to trade within 18 months in terms of carbon credits. The steering committee also has been made, which comprises 18 representatives from various ministries and government agencies, led by the Ministry of Power and the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. The governance of Indian carbon market and direct oversight of its functioning shall vest in the National Steering Committee. So I think institutions like us should also get a seat in this kind of national steering committees, because it's an opportunity for the institute to participate in the governance of Indian carbon market and direct oversight of its functioning by showcasing the credentials and the people of our institute and its strength and its functions. Again, the steering committee's functions include recommendations to the Power Ministry's Bureau Energy Efficiency, formulation and finalization of rules and regulations, setting of specific greenhouse gases emission targets for compliant sectors, issuance of carbon credit certificates and their renewal and expiry. It will also look for finalization of guidelines regarding trading of carbon credit certificates outside India. It said without giving further explanation. India is one of the largest issuers of carbon credits in the world, my friends. Between 2010 to 2022, India has issued 278 million credits in the voluntary carbon market, accounting for 17% of the global supply, according to January 31st report of Greenhouse Gas Emissions Special Report of S&P Global Commodity Insights. So India is already giving the carbon credit certifications, some of which are globally getting traded. But with our Indian exchanges also starting this trading, this will be a bigger activity altogether. So rest in part 2, my friends. Thanks for your patient listening. Now the floor is left for Q&A. And as you may be knowing, in part 2, we will be dealing with carbon markets, world scenario, and carbon credits versus offsets. That will be dealing in part 2. And in part 3, we'll be dealing with role of CMA in carbon markets. So part 2 will be on October 25th, the same time, 5 to 7:30. Part 3 will be on October 26th, the same time, 5 to 7:30. Hope the information is useful to you. Now, if you have any questions, you can ask me. The floor is open for questions. Admin, can you open up whoever wants to ask the questions? Hello, admin. Admin.
Sir, I think we can unmute ourselves and ask.
Yeah, you can unmute yourself and ask. Yes, of course.
Yes, sir, I have a question that
Yeah.
these carbon credits, whatever
Yeah.
certifications are being generated today in India, are these agencies requiring some kind of pre-qualification from the UN or something? What kind of agencies are these?
Okay, currently what's happening is the people who are experienced in trading these certifications are helping the Indian companies to get these certificates. Okay, there are consultancies from UK and some of the even Baltic countries. They come and work for cheaper rates. So of course you can also do that if you learn those aspects, and if you license in a better manner with the worldwide exchanges which deal with the Indian credits, you can also deal with that. Nothing stops you from doing that. Only thing you need to have the wherewithal and knowledge. You got it, Anuradha?
Yes, sir, I understood. Only thing I was wondering was, do you require any special courses or qualifications
It's
to
learning,
do
no,
this
no
thing?
qualification. It's learning. In trading, there is no question of any qualification. You just need to learn it. I mean to say, you need to gain experience.
Okay, so you need to begin with someone who's already trading, and then maybe you understand the
Yeah,
market
like
just like
see
stock
how.
markets.
Absolutely, absolutely, yes. But one thing, for a company to obtain the certificate, yes, you can help as a professional with your additional knowledge, because you can help the company in counting how much credit they can get, for how much credit they are eligible, in which industry they are in, for which industry these credits are allowed. Okay, that way you can do a client consulting, client specific, client oriented consulting to tune the client to be able to get these carbon credit certificates.
So for that, we would have to first study the carbon emissions which are allowed in India for our companies, Indian companies, right?
Absolutely. We have been allowed in 13 sectors. Just now I quoted that, right?
Right, right.
Yeah,
So
those
those
sectors.
laws are still in the formative stage.
In
Since
formative
the
stage, but see, for Indian exchanges to deal with, okay, but the same certificates, if some companies already have in those sectors, those can be dealt in the international exchanges. I have mentioned some of the international exchanges are allowing even the Indian companies to trade on their bourses.
yes, yes.
Yeah, so that way, matchmaking, like you can do a matchmaking between the company certifications and the exchange by dealing with the exchange professionals. Unlike India, you can easily deal with the overseas carbon credit exchange people. They are amenable, they are approachable. You can talk to them. Okay, they will help you, guide you, and likewise, you can help your client if they don't know how to trade these things. Okay, that also you can do.
Sir, what would this be considered? Export of what, like commodity or?
It's not export, it's trading, you are just trading,
Yeah,
you are
yeah.
just
So
you're just trading your credit, and it's like a revenue for you,
yeah,
revenue for the
so
company.
when
Your
I
client,
receive money, when the company receives money, you have to
yeah,
generate the
it's a revenue.
FIRs, So
Yes, yeah, it's a
what do
revenue.
you call it? Like income from
income from carbon credits. As I told you the example of Tesla.
Yeah.
Tesla in one quarter made roughly about $586 million revenue only from carbon credits trading. So it's a trading income.
Okay, so maybe the government should also give export incentives to carbon credits which are sold outside India, like it gives for other services.
See, it's market mechanism, demand and supply scenario, right? So if you are able to go and sell in UK or Paris kind of exchanges at a higher price, then you gave a good return to your client, right? I have shown you the pricing limits, high and low ranges, right?
Yes, yes.
Brazil gives very cheap rates for the credits, whereas UK and Paris and USJ gives high rates. So if
Right.
you strike a good deal with any of these three exchanges, I think that's a good revenue for your client. So it's like trading revenue for your client, income from other sources, if you want to classify it.
Yeah. For tax purposes, I wanted to understand. Like.
Yeah. Any other questions, friends? There is one guest.
Hello.
Yeah. Yes, please.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
sir.
have written 2 queries in the chat. Can you please take from there?
One sec. I'll open.
Sanjay Natekar.
I'll open, sir.
Or I can repeat the question.
Yeah. Whether a company can buy its entire carbon credit requirements from the market, where such certificates are legally traded, or is there any mandatory minimum which the company has to achieve itself? No, sir. You can buy to the extent of your requirement.
Entire? Okay.
Yes, entire, yes.
And the second query, if I have any surplus carbon credits for this year, can I carry it forward to the next year, or is there any expiry like that?
No, there is no expiry. It can be carried forward. But generally, there won't be any expiry unless you deliberately think of carrying it forward. What I mean to say is there is no extension of the carbon credit in a particular year. Okay, you can carry forward that. Okay, unless you think that you don't want to sell it this year and make money. Say you are a punter, for example, you are a speculator. You have surplus carbon credits.
No. I'm talking about a genuine manufacturing company which somehow feels that next year I may not be able to fulfill my quota. So I can whether I can carry forward my.
Then you can keep for yourself. Yes. But there are people in the market also who anticipate higher price in the coming years.
And that is more of speculation.
Speculation. They can also keep. There is no restriction that you should sell it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I could see Arun Saha. How are revenues generated from carbon markets reinvested to support sustainability and climate initiatives? This is a good question. So this is a socio-economic question because see, governments get taxes when you trade. On trade there will be a tax. If you are getting a capital gain, for example, okay, there will be a tax on that. So those tax revenues goes to government, and even if you don't cover up your deficit, I mean to say the debits, carbon credit debits in a particular year, still you are a great emitter, say, then government may also put penalties on you. Okay, so those are all the revenue methods that government uses for investing on the infrastructure and other socio-economic requirements. So that way, the money generated from carbon markets in a way through tax mechanism helps sustainability and climate initiatives. That is to say, I told you about reforestation, afforestation again. Okay, such kind of activities are taken up by the governments even today. Okay. Likewise, control measures they can follow. Likewise, there are many ways in which they can control these what you call emissions and can go for supporting sustainability.
Hello.
And
Madam, we know.
yeah.
Okay.
Kindly credit, what are the some successful examples of carbon market implementations around the world? I spoke about many exchanges. They all are the successful markets for carbon credits. And there are many markets, but you can say about 15 markets are very well, I mean to say, doing well. One is the European Union market, one is the Chinese market, one is the US market. Huh? Sunny Ahuja, you want to say something? Hello. So, successful examples of carbon market implementations around the world are the success of various exchanges which I have spoken about. There are many exchanges which are successfully running, and the turnover on those exchanges is quite very good, like European Energy Exchange, that is EEX, then Chicago Climate Exchange, CCX, California Carbon Market, WCI, and then you have Emission Trading Systems China, ETS China it is called as, then the Korean Exchange, KRX. All these exchanges have very good trading, I mean, turnovers, and they are actually contributing a lot. Any other questions, please?
Yes, sir. I would just like to understand the morality of this kind of carbon credit trading, because if you look at a country like Bhutan, which produces so much of greenery, and it is the carbon negative country in the world. But because of carbon generation in other areas of the world, it is suffering from climate change and related issues. So however much you compensate Bhutan monetarily through carbon credit trading and all, it is not going to reverse the impact of climate change, which has already happened. So in a way, this carbon credit trading system as a whole is, I mean, I genuinely feel that it is simply shifting carbon generation from one place to another. That's all. It is not reducing it overall.
That's a good observation. See,
no, but
why
Bhutan enjoys the manufacturing benefits, na, which the whole world provides.
Why
that also aspect is there, na?
At what cost? But
no,
someone else is
okay,
paying.
But if
someone in Bhutan may not feel that way.
Sanjay?
Yeah.
I'll answer Sunny. It's like this. See, Bhutan also emits, for your information, though it's a hilly country, green country, but its factories are not up to the mark. Okay, they also emit substantially. If you look at the carbon emission index in Bhutan, it's no lesser. Okay, keeping that aside, what is the incentive? Basically, how we are controlling the wrong doers in the whole process is through disincentivizing them. See, you put a penalty on the guy and make him bleed in terms of his profits by buying these credits at a costly price on demand supply basis. Then 1 year he may buy, second year, first year he may buy, second year he may buy. When the industry scenario is not good, still he emits, and if he is not in a position to buy, then he is into losses. Then he will automatically go out of the system, or otherwise additionally invest in carbon reducing systems in his factory or the workplace, whatever it is. So what I'm here saying is, this disincentivization, though not called as a penalty, it is a kind of penalty imposed on the wrongdoers by making them buy the credits. So I think over a period of time, the aim should be to reduce the emissions, but not actually do the wrong thing and buy and escape from it. That is not the objective over there.
Is negative subsidy.
Yes, it's a negative subsidy. Yeah, Sanjay, you want to say something?
No, same thing.
Yeah. Okay, great. Any other questions, please?
Sir, if I may ask another question. Now,
Yes,
UNDP has covered most of these greenhouse gas emissions and other environmental issues which relate to climate change. But if you look at the world today, Ukraine is at war, Israel is at war. So there is a lot of carbon emission or heat emission directly.
correct.
So is there any worldwide system where these countries are made to purchase carbon credits for whatever ammunition they have fired?
The sanctions, for example, the sanctions is a kind of indirect penalization on them. For example, today Russia is under sanctions, right? Okay. When Russia is under sanctions due to Ukraine war, today whatever the inflation the whole world is facing and feeling, and whatever the interest rates rise world across you are seeing, why they are not coming down? Because Ukraine happened to be the highest contributor of commodities to the world, and Russia happens to be the largest contributor of oil and gas to the European region. Today, when you put sanctions, then the whole world is facing the brunt of it, and we are in a way we are in a way what you call subsidizing their war by paying higher costs to the commodities. Okay, because of inflation on one side, and because of high interest rates, we are again disincentivized. I mean to say, it's again negative this thing, but we are facing that grunt for the wrongdoers. But ultimately, those countries are getting damaged anyway, right? Again, that will be a reconstruction opportunity for us when Ukraine war ends. Say, for example, when Israel-Palestine war ends, then the reconstruction happens. That reconstruct, as Karl Marx, the great economist, said, whenever there is a war, though there is a damage, but again, it's an opportunity for economic revival. So that way, when the war ends, then again you will be having ample number of opportunities in terms of reconstruction in all types of projects. So there, India also benefits. We as Indian citizens will also benefit. That way, everybody benefits. So I think economy, that's why it is called as circular economy. That's why it's called as one day you are up, the other day you are down, but you will be balanced if you take a longer period. That way you need to consider.
Sir, but in so many years, right, from the Iraq and Iran and everything, we have seen that only the arms manufacturers in these countries prosper economically, if you go to say.
Yeah, correct. That's anyway. That's always developed countries manipulated the third world and developing countries that way by creating problems between them among themselves. So that is again a different topic. But yes, I agree with you.
So do you see the formation of some rating agencies for carbon credits, just like we have CRISIL and all, same way? Will there be
I think,
something like that?
yes, the agencies will come into picture. They will create some role for themselves also, right? In the carbon credits advisory or in trading or wherever it is, they also create some role for themselves to earn some revenue, because today everything is revenue based or penalties based for these regulatory agencies and these rating agencies also. So no wonder they will also create a space for themselves in one way or the other. They may bring a rating for the company, whoever rating in the sense that the company is following the emission norms quite well. So they will say even for the guy whoever is within the emission limits. Okay, those who are crossing, they'll put some E minus, something like that. I'm just giving an example, okay, for nomenclature purpose. That way, they may also find a role for themselves by rating these companies in terms of carbon credits versus carbon debits.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello, actually, we have to see it in this way that if this carbon credit mechanism is dismantled, then there will be whatever little incentive is there today will be lost.
Yes. Yes, of course. Yeah. Yeah.
So it is undoubtedly an attraction to remain within limits.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there is a threat also. You see, governments tend to change their policies. If you see Delhi and around, even in Mumbai, the city-based industries which were polluting once upon a time were shifted, right, to faraway places.
Outskirts.
So that threat they will be facing anyway. But that comes with some dynamic governments as and when they take possession, they take bold decisions like this. Yeah. Any other questions, sir? Please unmute yourself and you can ask.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. There is one question from PMPCS BK Unhelkar. Shall be great to hear your views on green bonds SEBI is working upon in the context of carbon market. The green bond is for like our friend Mr. Sanjay asked, that is for investing on green infrastructures, a green bond that SEBI is working on. Okay. Otherwise, maybe going forward, the green bond can be nomenclatured as a bond like a credit. Credit can be given a nomenclature as a green bond, one green bond, two green bonds, like that. Okay, from the perspective of carbon credits. But as of now, as I know, the green bond that SEBI is working is for raising money for the purpose of green infrastructure spending by the government. Unhelkar ji. Yeah. We have good crowd today, good attendance today. More than 65 people at the peak time attended. And this is a good improvement from the WIRC side, where I used to address 5 years back a crowd of 10-15 people only in the institute physically.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, online wise, yes, there is a very good improvement. And I thank all the participants today. Seemingly there are no further questions. So have a nice, good night and good morning tomorrow. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
Thank you, sir, for a wonderful session, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, sir.